Hello and a very warm welcome to Bharata First. I'm Rausan Pereira. This is FRP Explains. I'm here to talk about an issue, that of the teacher's death in Uttar Pradesh as a result of the Panchayat polls. Why am I talking about it now? There are several dimensions to this issue and I want to take them all up, and so that we can have a holistic view about this subject as well. The Panchayat polls were to be conducted in December 2020, but the government and the State Election Commission did not go ahead with it because they were not keen to go through with the polls because of the rising number of cases. And then it was taken up in the Allahabad High Court, and the Allahabad High Court on February 7th said that the polls must be conducted and they should be finished by April 30th. And that's when the dates were notified and the State Election Commission decided to go ahead with the polls. On the 7th of April, there was another petition filed in the Allahabad High Court talking about how the cases have gone up considerably from February to April. It was about 5,000 in the whole of Uttar Pradesh in February, and it went up to 50,000 by April 7th. Even then, the Allahabad High Court said nothing doing, proper COVID appropriate precautions should be taken, and the polls must go according to plan. And that's when the State Election Commission decided to go ahead with the election. So this is one aspect to it. So the same court later on, when another PIL was filed in the Allahabad High Court talking about how many deaths were caused as a result of the Panchayat polls, the figures vary, of course. The state government says only 3 people have died, whereas the teachers union talks about a number over 1,600. Now, who's telling the truth, who's not telling the truth, I'm not going to get into that. I'm just going to give you the dimensions of this entire story. So the court then said all these people have to be compensated. All those who have died as a result of the Panchayat polls is a direct repercussion of what the elections have done, and hence they have to be compensated adequately, is what the Allahabad High Court said. The same High Court which a few months ago insisted that the polls should be undertaken. Now, whether COVID appropriate precautions were actually in place or not, I don't know. How well the protocols were followed, how well the SOPs were followed, I can't comment on that. Maybe there was some lapse there too, and that's why we saw so many people getting infected. Here's where I have a problem. The state says that there are only 3 people who have died as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. The COVID-19 pandemic is not like a bullet from the gun that you shoot somebody and the person dies immediately. The State Election Commission rules very clearly suggest that a person is covered under state election duty when the person leaves his home, goes for either polling duty or counting duty, and then goes back and settles at home. It doesn't count the period after that. So what if the person has contracted the virus during that time of election duty and dies later on? It's not covered. Isn't that a little absurd? The rule itself seems a little absurd. How can you say that, just he's contracted the virus then, may have contracted the virus then, but died later, so he cannot be covered? I think that's a problem in the rule itself, and we shouldn't be throwing the rule book at those who have put their lives on the line and who have lost their life too, because they too can be considered as frontline workers, because they have gone and carried out their work at such a crucial time, at a time when everybody else, at a time when the entire country is almost in lockdown kind of situation. That is another aspect. So this too needs to be looked into. Now this figure of 1,600, whether it is true or not, really it's very difficult to say, because the issue now has been highly politicized and political parties are playing politics with this. Rather than politicizing the issue, we need to look at what can be the possible outcomes. Similar is the case in Madhya Pradesh as well, where a bypoll in Damo was held, and it has now come out that 17 people have died as a result of this. So who's going to look into that matter? Especially in one instance, a 58-year-old teacher contracted the virus and passed away after election duty. His wife too then picked up the virus from him a couple of days later, and she too passed away. So the 25-year-old boy now has no parents. So how do we look at this? There's a human angle to it as well. There's an emotional angle to it too. So all these aspects need to be looked at. You just can't look at it with one myopic view, being very rigid on the rules. That is another dimension. Now I would like to talk about the banking sector and how much the bankers have suffered too. The teachers on polling duty have indeed suffered, and I guess better sense at some point in time should prevail, and we should not go ahead with these elections and polls, especially at a time like this. I understand that the dates were announced much beforehand, the court has put pressure as well, but somehow we need to find a middle ground and get out of this very tricky situation. Talking about the banking sector. Now the banking sector has lost 1,300 lives as a result of the pandemic. That is about 0.1% of the total population, or have died. 0.1% is the average of the number of banking employees who have died as a result of COVID-19. If you look at the national average, it is at about 0.02% of the total population of 130 crores. So clearly, the banking sector employees have been hit badly. This is something that the Bankers Association has been talking about as well. And I would like to speak about them because it's a sector that is hardly being spoken about. They too should be considered as frontline warriors, because the banking sector is a very crucial sector. It keeps our entire economy afloat, and they have been working day in and day out tirelessly. I have gone to the bank so many times during the course of the pandemic, and I've seen how they have worked. Of course, they're trying to take those precautions, but the virus has mutated into such a horrible thing that no longer does it look like those basic precautions are enough. So the call from the bankers is to get vaccinated. Hope that they get vaccinated soon, because they are working day in and day out for us, and we can't do without the banking sector. So I just wanted to say that and put that word out as well for the banking sector, because these are vulnerable sections of society that is hardly spoken about, and we hope that we start speaking about them too and hear their voices as well. It's just a way of voicing their opinions. On the whole, better sense needs to prevail, and we need to look at this entire issue from a human perspective, from a human angle as well, and not just from the rigidity of rules. With that, it's a wrap on this edition of FRP Explains. If you like the video or if you like the content, please like this video first, subscribe, hit the bell icon, and then all notifications. For those of you who would like to come forward and make a contribution, you may do so by using our UPI IDs. A small contribution that you make will go a long way in us bringing you this content. That's it from me. See you again next time.